Elchanan was born in Dembitsa, because that's where my mother comes from. I don't know the year, but if my mother came here in 1911 and he came about a year or two before her, so I would imagine he came 1909, according to what my mother said on the video that Avi sent me. I was listening to it, and she said they were there a year or two before her father came, after her father came. So he came from Dembitsa, the same place, of course, my mother is from, and her sisters and her brothers. And what he did there, I have no idea, but my grandmother ran the dry goods store that they had. So I don't know exactly what he did. Haven't got a clue. I don't know what his business was. When he came to America, he used to be a peddler. And in their apartment, my mother had said in this talk that he used to have the goods stocked up in the living room, where they also used to sleep, but he used to peddle from there until he opened up a store. I don't remember where the store was. It was the Lower East Side, but I have no idea where on the Lower East Side. I really don't remember. I remember going, but I can't tell you where it was. Maybe Avi, maybe your father would remember, because the old things he remembers, the new things he doesn't. I would ask him. So anyway, Elchanan, then after my mother was here with her mother and her sister Dora, and the reason my mother was taken is because she was a devil, and they were afraid to leave her with her older sister and younger brothers, because she said they most probably would kill her. I don't know if they meant really, but most probably would beat her up. So she came with her mother. Her father was already here, and they lived on the Lower East Side in a tenement building that had the toilets in the hall, because she used to tell stories about how she used to have to clean the bathrooms and yell at the other tenants that they didn't keep it clean enough. And she told about having to walk to get ice at the pier, because it was cheaper if she schlepped it from there on her shoulder in a paper, wrapped in paper, than if the guy came around and sold it, it would cost them more money. I guess money was tight in those days. She told me, I remember, that there was a table in the kitchen, and when you lifted the table top, that was the bathtub. So the tabletop was on top of the bathtub. And then they'd heat the water, and her father would take his bath first, then the kids, and then the mother. Now, I don't know when they moved from there someplace else, because I'm not clear as to when her mother died and she was pulled out of school to take care of her father. I don't know where they were living at that time. I never really got into that. But my grandfather was a very stately person, and he always, when he came to visit, which was rare that I remember, we always went to him we had to take a bus and a trolley car, that I remember, to his store. He always came, he was always dressed in a suit, a white shirt, a tie, and a hat. And we have pictures of him. I believe it's your father's bar mitzvah, Avi. I have a picture of him at the bar mitzvah, and that's the way he was dressed. Always in a suit, a tie, and a shirt. So when he came, the only one that ever sat in my father's chair was my grandfather. No one else would ever sit in my father's chair. Holy, that was my father's club chair. That was it. I remember when my grandfather used to come and I used to come in, I was the favorite little granddaughter, because again, I was the youngest. And I remember when I used to come in, and he only spoke Yiddish to me. For some reason, he spoke English, but he never spoke English to me, always spoke Yiddish. And he would always say to me, Chayla, die das nur reden Yiddish zu mir. And I'd look at him with a straight face and say, Grandpa, I'm an American. I speak English. I got a frask on my face, and to me, Zu mir, that's Yiddish. So you better believe that I learned Yiddish very fast from my parents, because when my grandfather came, he expected me to speak Yiddish to him. Now, I don't remember how old I was, but I never had any toys. And I remember, that the dolls came later on in high school when my cousin Harriet was already working and in the business world, because she's, of course, much older than me. That's when I started that collection. But when I was a little girl, I don't remember any toys. I remember as a little kid when I was about 2, I had a little teeny doll, and I had a watering can, because we used to go to Rockaway to visit my aunt all the time. So we would water the plants with this, and I would play with the little doll at the beach. But I don't remember ever having toys until one day my grandfather came with a doll carriage and a doll that had a pillow. And a matter of fact, I still have the pillow today. I still sleep with it on my bed. It's a little emaciated, but I never took it off my bed. And I had a little pillow and a blanket and a doll and a carriage. That to me was like a treat. I was so excited about this doll carriage that I had. Never had a bike, never had skates, I never had anything. Anyway, so we used to go to the East Side, schlep by bus and by trolley car. And we used to go there a lot on Thursday, because my mother would go to the Lower East Side to pick up fabric if she needed to make some clothing for us, and to get fish. So my grandfather would take us to the fish store to get the fish, and my mother would bring the fish home to Borough Park, cook for Shabbos. I don't remember if it was Wednesday or Thursday, but never on a Friday, because my mother had to prepare on a Friday. So I remember the store very vividly, with all the fabrics neatly piled up on the shelves. It was I'd say about 20 feet wide, and about, God knows, for me, it was humongous, long, long store. And I remember the counter, I barely can see over it. The counter was worn like this, like a center was lowered from the people using it all the time, I guess, and measuring and touching, whatever. So I remember it not being straight, always a little bit of a dent in it, I guess, from the fabrics and from touching and from moving, I don't know. I also remember he used to keep a cigar box behind the counter, and he'd leave candy there for me, and always walk away and make believe he doesn't see me the candy when I'd walk around the counter and look that he's not looking and take a piece of candy out. So I remember those very fondly, because that was the time I thought he would give me a nickel. I mean, a nickel, in those days, what I can buy for a nickel. I can buy a piece of candy. I can buy a piece of cake. I can buy a pickle. I mean, you can buy very exciting things for 5 cents in those days. And then he would take me, my mother watched the store, and he would take me to get the fish. So he'd take me to get the fish, and he'd pick me up he was really a big guy. He'd pick me up in his hand, and he'd look at me and he'd say to me, Chayla, was a fish willst du für dein Mama? And I'd look at him and I go, was a fish? A fish. He's a bewusst fish. Dus fish, die gachst dus fish. I would pick out a fish. I said, Mama willst a größer fish. So I pick out a big fish. I had no idea what this fish was.
Translate it. Right.
I would just point to a fish, and they would take it out. And what upset me at that point, the man would take this wooden gavel and hit it on the head until it died. And I used to cry, "Verwisst ihr es gehagen, the fish, the fish." I thought I was taking this fish home as a pet. I don't know, it would be my dinner. But I do remember, once, oh God, how old was it? I must have been 10. My mother I have the fish tin here in the house that she used to use for cookies. Big, brown, like a metal fish tin. She brought home a carp one day about a week and a half before the holidays, because it was that much cheaper. And she had the fish in the bathtub. and I will never forget this because it was the smartest fish I have ever seen. That fish used to jump up, and this is the truth because I saw it, hit the handle to let the water run, and he always overflooded that's when she never brought fish home after that because she said she can't afford this. He kept having floods from the fish. That I will never forget. We could not take a bath for 5 days. Had this fakakta fish in the bathtub. That I remember. But my grandfather never really had part in our lives. Like a grandfather would come and spend time with the family together.
So you don't?
Remember him coming on occasion and always going to him. Never him come. Very rarely did he come to us.
So you don't know a lot about where he came from, what he did in the old country?
He did. He came from Dembitsa, where my mother came from.
Yeah, but you don't know what he did.
What he did there? Maybe the store was his too, but my grandmother ran it, so I don't know. Maybe he had another business. Maybe while my grandmother ran the dry good for us, he would peddle. I don't know what he did. No one ever told me.
Did he come here with siblings?
No, he came alone. He came alone. He came and stayed with his cousin. He came and stayed with his cousin. And then when my grandmother got tired of waiting for him after he was here, God knows, 2 years or so, she made money. So she bought tickets for her, for Etsy and for Dora, wrote them a letter, she's coming on this and this ship, and arrived, and they picked her up at the pier. And my mother, in the thing that Avi has, tells about how they examined them on the ship before they got off the ship, blah, 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 blah. She never went.
I saw that years ago.
Never went to Ellis Island. And then 2 years after that, then the siblings came. They sold everything and they came to America.
Which siblings?
Sadie, Jaime, and Louie. Because her and Dora are already here. Dora is the youngest. My mother was
okay, at these siblings, okay. But not at Elhanan's siblings. We don't know what.
No, I don't know any. I don't think Elhanan. I don't know anything about Elhanan's family at all.
Okay. Do you know where he?
I told you I have a floor plan here, and I wanted to know who Dewar Stimler is, but his name was not Stimler. In Poland, it was Stumler, Schtumler. That's what's on the floor plan. And I wrote you when I was there, if you remember, who is Dewar. And I also see the family Gwertz, who's a relative of ours who lived in Dembika too.
Gwertz, I have somewhere listed. We're descendants somehow from Gwertz also. But they were part of the store in Dembitz?
Say that again?
Gwertz was part of the ownership of the store in Dembitz?
No, I said she's family. I didn't say anything about
Okay.
They own their own store. My grandmother owned the own store.
So the floor plan is not a
Stories my mother told, and Avi caught it on, I mean, he has the tape because I interviewed her when we were going to Ellis Island, that she was very jealous when my mother ordered a dress for one of her sisters. So she would go with my mother as she would order the dress, the shoes, the bows, whatever she ordered, the hat or whatever. And she'd go to the same places and say, my mom is gezoekt to mach mir ochet a kittel or a dress. How do you say dress? I forgot already. A kleid. My mom is gezoekt that will the same sheikh, and her mother would go and pick up. Suddenly there were two of everything. She said, why do I have two? I ordered for one. She says, your daughter came in and said that she'd order for her too. So we made it for her. Of course, her mother took it, but that was my mother.
What about when you say Elhanan's wife died very early? You don't remember, it was before you were born.
Of course,
when did he die and where was he buried?
He's buried in Brooklyn. Yes, my father, Joel knows where. He's buried, and his wife's name is Hannah, which was surprising.
Henchetel, no?
Her name was Hannah. In English, it was Hannah. Yeah, you have to ask Joel, it's off of the Jackie Robinson Parkway where the cemeteries are, but if you think I would find it again, I don't think so. But I was shocked to see the name on the tombstone because I'm named after her and my name is Chaya Rivka Leah. And I said, how did they get the Chaya Rivka Leah from Hannah? Well, Chaya was added because she died young and you don't name a baby after someone that died young. So you add Chaya to live long. Rivka Leah, but her name was Hannah. So don't ask me how I got my name. I don't know. Maybe her name was Hannah Rivka. I think it might have been Hannah Rivka. I'm not sure.
Well, it might have been at the American.
Well, actually, I took a picture of the tombstone. I wonder if I still have it. I took a picture of the tombstone. I have to look for it.
You should send it to me.
I don't know. I don't know if I saved it. I have to look. I don't even remember when I was there. What year Joel took me, but I bet Joel would remember, Avi.
I think so. How much you want to bet?
He remembers the old time. He doesn't remember the new stuff. So I bet and it's telling me we'd like to go to the cemetery, pick me up and we'll go one Sunday. But I do remember taking a picture of the tombstone and wondering why, how did I get the name Rita Leah if her name is Hannah? And I'm supposed to be named after her. Anyway, they lived, I saw the shtetl that they lived in. I saw Freud's house. I saw the doctor's house. I saw the shul. And I saw where, now whose grandfather was it? That was a butcher, but he was killed. I think it was Ephraim's grandfather was killed there in a pogrom. And I know where their house is now, but I didn't know where it is then. And I had this dream of going back to Poland to knock at the door. They have not changed that shtetl at all. It is exactly the way it was. Nothing
Irene,
moved.
can you make a copy of that map of the city?
It's too big. I can't do it. It was made in Poland and sent to me. It's way too big and there's no machine here that I can do it in. You'll have to come here and see what you can. I can't take a picture with my camera, my phone. It won't take the whole thing.
Take in sections.
You'll never piece it together. Avi, it's not very clear. It's very old. Now, the thing is, I know that she lived behind Ephraim's house. That Ephraim told me, but he didn't remember how many blocks. I did not have time to drive around the neighborhood because I was on a tour with clients and I couldn't say, excuse me, we're not going to get to where we're going because I have to see where my mother lived. And at that point, I wasn't too sure where, and Ephraim wasn't able to help me with that either. Do I have those pictures? I don't think I have it anymore. If I have it, I'll send it, but I think Joel has a picture of it someplace. I need time to sit here and clean out some of these pictures. But Elchanan was a very stately man and very smart and ran the family with an iron hand.
Mhm.
But, my mother was very smart because my mother wanted to make money herself. She didn't want to depend on her father to give her pennies and she was taking care of him. So what she used to do at night, they used to advertise on trees. She'd get up in the middle of the night, sneak out, rip off all the advertisements and apply for the job. And she was the only one that applied, so she got the job. And then one job she didn't like, she told me, frames for pocketbooks, and they were sharp, so she was cutting herself. So she says, this is not for me. Then she took another job and another job. She finally got a job. She knew how to sew as a young kid because I don't know if her mother couldn't have taught her. I don't know where she learned to sew. Maybe at 15, 16, and 17, she learned to sew, possibly from someone. because she used to make clothing. She used to make clothing, she told me, for
Yes.
her and herself, her blouses, her skirts. I know she sewed even after she was married. So she finally sold herself off as a manager in a factory that manufactured union suits. Do you know what a union suit is?
See,
Sure.
that does sound very familiar.
What's a union suit, Avi?
Underwear.
Underwear?
One-piece underwear. In the winter, they had warm.
Usually red with a red flap, with
It
a
had
flap in
like
the
a
back.
trap door in the back that you
Trap
open, had to go to the back. I said, by the way, I have your great grandfather's unions. I said, no, your grandfather's union suit in my closet.
Okay, you can have that.
Whoever wants it can have it. And I have my mother's wedding gown in my closet, not in good condition, but I have it. So she sold herself off as a manager. I think she was 17 years old or 18 years old. And the guy says, what do you know about sewing? He says, I know about sewing. See, my dress, I sew it myself. I know everything about sewing. I'm a good manager, you'll see. So he gave her a chance and she straightened out the place. And I said to her one day, gee, Mom, they must have hated you, these women. You gotta work, you gotta work, you gotta work, you gotta work, you gotta work faster, you gotta work faster. She said, nope, they love me. I said, how can they love a manager? She said, listen, I went in one day to the boss and I showed him. I said, do you like this? Do you see how the buttons match up with the holes? He goes, yes. Then pause. You see how it matches up? And you see how many more you're getting a week from these women? He said, yes, you're really doing a good job. He says, but do you really like the job these women are doing? And he said, yes, Etty, I really like the job. And a matter of
Give him a
fact,
raise.
I think want to open another factory and I want you to run that by yourself. You don't need me. I really need, no, I can't do it. I have to be home for my father. You see the women work hard? He says, yes. He said, if you don't give them a raise, the buttons and the holes are not going to match. That's how they loved her. She was a forerunner of the unions, this woman. And they got a raise and they were very happy with the raise. I think she got them like 5 cents an hour or something like that with regard. 8 hours a day is 40 cents. A lot of money in those days. So, you know, she was a finagler. She said, I have to be home for my father. You know, 5 o'clock I leave. I have to be home for my father because she had to be home and have dinner ready. And that's what she do. She would only take, she liked that job because she was able to get away with it. What can I tell you? But Elchanan was not a very friendly person. He was very quiet, very authoritative, and you knew he was someone that you reckoned with. You respected him because he was your grandfather and because of who he was. That was it. So that I don't know too much about him. I do, after being in Dembika and seeing the little town, where the Reichs hid, it was heartbreaking to see, really was. The anti-Semitism is still there. It always will be there. But I don't have, at this my age, I don't think I'm going to be able to get back there again and see, find the house now that I have the floor plan. But maybe someone younger would like to do that, like Penina and you, Avi. I'll give you the floor plan and you go back and find it. Midweek, go to the office and say, help me find this house. I'm looking while I'm talking to you.
Yeah, Irene, I'm going to thank you very much. I'm going to let you stay with Avi. I got to
Oh,
go.
okay.
I got to go. Thank you, Avi. Thank you, Irene.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Hey,
it.
just we'll do it some other time. I'm gonna turn everything off. And
Well,
we can do it
Irene, you
again.
and Irene can continue if you want. I just
gotta go.
need to do some stuff.
well, there are 1,000 stories I can tell about my father and my mother.
Write them down and we'll do it again.
And Walter,
Okay.
you know about Walter, you know what
Right.
Walter used to do during the, after he left, when he came back from the Merchant Marines, he was on, the SS Akau. You know what kind of ship that was?
No idea.
Okay. So that ship it was an Israeli cargo ship. But what they were really doing is running guns to Israel. Because I remember one day opening up the closet in his room and I saw a gun, a rifle. He had a bunch of rifles in there. And he said to me, if you mention this to anyone, I will kill you. I said, what is it? I was at that point. He was in the army, so I was already. Now, how old would have he been? Let me think. If I was 6 and he was in the Merchant Marines, maybe 11. So I said, but you got to tell me what it is. He said, don't touch those. Those are dangerous. I'm taking them to Israel. And I looked at him like, why? So he explained to me the new state of Israel that's going to be coming is going to need these arms to protect themselves after the Holocaust. Big words that I didn't understand that much of in those days because the family hadn't started to come yet. But that's what they were doing. They were bringing guns from here to Israel. And he told me a story when he was in the Merchant Marines. He was in Italy and he went to a shul and was sitting next to Moshe Pak's son and never knew it was his cousin. When he went with the Merchant Marines and they landed up, I'm trying to think, it was the Merchant Marines or was it the SS Akel? I don't know if the Merchant Marines did they get to Israel? Yes, because they went to North Africa because of the war. He enlisted because he was 4F and he wanted to serve his country during World War II. So he landed up in Akka, in Israel, in Haifa, and found, I don't know how he found, well, this was maybe in the Merchant, no, this must have been on the Akel that he found them, because he took clothing, he went to see Pak. He found out where they lived. He went to see them. They were very poor. Oh my God, I stayed there. They lived in a horrible place at Hulon. I remember oh my God, it was awful. He went there and he took cigarettes and he took apples and fruits that they didn't have in Israel. And he came there and he knocked at the door and, cans of tuna fish from the ship. They had a PX on the ship. So he bought a whole bunch of stuff. And he knocked at the door and they recognized him immediately. They go, die bist Zin from Ettela. And he brought him all this stuff. And the guy looked at the apples. Moshe looked at the apples and he went down to the courtyard where all the kids were to show the kids in Hebrew, this is Zet Tapuach. They never saw apples. Wow. Next day, when he came back, Walter was tall and thin. He was thin, wore his pea jacket, had some things in his pockets. He had a little bag with stuff. Next day he comes, he was like this. He smuggled off the ship. He put clothing on top of clothing, on top of clothing, on top of clothing, and things in his pockets that you weren't allowed to take off, comes back to them. And he says in Hebrew, in Yiddish, die ist gewesen dar gestern and Heinz die bist fett. Yesterday you came, you were thin, and today you're fat. And he just took everything off. So they had undershirts and underpants. I mean, they had nothing. So I remember that story because when I came to Israel, and my mother used to send packages, and I bought two, literally, two brown, no, they were trunks, but not the heavy duty trunks. They were like a soft kind of cardboard kind of, I bought 2 trunks of stuff for them. And I found this guy was a policeman and he helped me put it on the bus. He took me to them. how am I gonna handle these two big trunks? I didn't have money for a cab to get from Haifa there. I walk in, he schleps it up for me, he brings it up. They recognize me immediately, Etty's daughter. And when I'm there, I stayed the weekend with them. I slept in the room that the son used to sleep in. His name was, I forgot already. Oh my God, my memory is getting there. What was Moshe Pak's son's name?
Can't help it.
No, he was Moshe, and the father was, I don't remember. Oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. He used to work with this terrible smelling paste to make wallets. And I slept in that room. I thought I would die. They had a shower with a cloth, but it went all over the floor when you took a shower. A little sink, a little ptilia to cook on. I was heartsick, but I see all the stuff. I said to them, what in Hebrew, why aren't you using this? Food's already old. He never ate the tuna fish because he was saving it. I said, no, you have to eat it. It's spoiled already. Some of the cans were bubbled. I said, in Hebrew, you have to throw this out. It's no good anymore. Please, these are good. Eat them. And I made them open them up and eat them. They were giving me their food and were eating nothing for the weekend. I said, no, open it up and eat it. So the next time I came back, and I was living there for a year, I already had a friend of mine that, by the way, I looked up. I suddenly remembered his name and I looked him up, and he lives in Manhattan. And Yossi and I went to see him. It's really funny. He worked for the American government, and I was able to get to the PX with him and pick out loads of food at a very cheap price. And I went back with all these tuna fish cans and cans of salmon and coffee and things I knew that would be considered kosher that I can bring them, and soap and you name it. And what else I bring them? I couldn't bring cheese because I didn't know if it was kosher or not, that I would get at the PX. Jam. And I bring all this stuff back to them. One day when I went to visit, I said to them in Yiddish, you have to eat this because you cannot leave this sitting on a shelf. You have to eat this. And I brought back, I remember, a big bag of fruit and vegetables, things that normally you couldn't get in Israel. In 58, they didn't have that much of a choice of things you can get either. So it was an experience for me to learn. And then I was there watching a little girl until the mother gave birth, and then to help with the baby. That's how I went to Israel and lived with them at the beginning till I got a job. I was standing in the courtyard there. It was like a street with no cars, with houses on each side. This guy walks up to me and says to me, do you have a brother? I said, I have two brothers. Why? Is one of them Walter Blazer? I said, why do you ask? He says, because you look like him. I said, I don't look like my brother Walter at all. I look like my mother. But if you say I look like my brother, yes. But how do you know my brother Walter? He said, we worked on the SS Echo together. And I was with him when they were chasing us, and he lost his glasses and he couldn't see. And I had to hold him to get him back on the ship, or they would have killed us. Right. I said, really? That's interesting. So I wrote my brother a letter. I said, hey, Walter, I met so-and-so. What happened? You never told mommy the story. I do remember him asking my mother to send him glasses.
Wow.
To go to the doctor and send him
glasses. We have 1 minute left.
Okay.
You know how to spell SS Echo?
Say that again?
You know how to spell the Echo, the ship? How is it spelled?
So what?
Spell the ship name, SS Echo. How do you spell that?
Oh, it was the Akko. I think it was the AKKO.
I'll look that up. All right, anyway, so let's stop for now. And if you want to do
okay, I don't think I have too many more stories to tell you.
I'm sure you can think of more, but
the only thing is I told you is my mother became a citizen after I was born, exactly 1 month to the day, July 17th, 1939. And I was born June 17th, 1939.
All right.
But my mother, I mean, there are 10,000 stories of some of the things that she would pull and do. But her baking, the way people remember her, she was a tough mom. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
You never, if someone said, did you ever get hit as a child? I said, no. Because all my mother had to do is look at me, and I said, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I went to my room.
Yeah.
But your father was really mean to me, I have to tell you. At every chance he took, this guy was so jealous of me that he would kill me. But I learned to